Scout, it's not nice to put your paw on someone. This is Scout, and this is Scout's roadmap to success. Speaking of that, so if you're petting her and she puts her paw on you like that, immediately stop petting her. That's kind of a dominance move, and if you stop petting the instant she does it, you can start telling her, that's what I don't want. I don't want that, and so it stops me from petting you. Now this is just, she's trying to get a little bit closer. She wants the treats. How about a down? Down. Down. Don't repeat a command word. The more you repeat it, the less you mean it. Okay, so Scout, the video above is really addressing her primary issue is being aggressive towards other dogs. We didn't work on teaching her not to be aggressive. What we taught her is what we call cutoff signals. And so that she gets in a habit of looking away from dogs rather than staring at them. And then the closer they get, the more intense she gets, and eventually she explodes. So, and make sure you go at the pace I described there. The biggest mistake people make with that is they push the dog too far, too fast. In order for it to be effective, she cannot react at all the whole time. And keep the practices short and make sure that they end on a success rate. I would recommend a dog park if you can't find other dogs to practice this with. Remember, just if the camera is where the dog park is and I'm the parking lot, be on this side of that side so you can have whatever distance you need. And as the dogs are walking back and forth, instead of she's staring at them, you get her practice looking away and giving that cutoff signal. Okay, now Scout has already taken our puppy socialization class, or 2 of the 3, and so she knows a lot of the lessons that we went over. I talked a little bit about the focus exercise. We didn't get a chance to go over it. The Guardians did go through it in class. If you have any questions about that or forget how to do it, please let me know. I would practice that quite a bit because that's another great way. The idea with the video above is to teach her to give that cutoff signal on her own. And you could say view or whatever the command word is that you come up with and get her to look away. But teaching the focus, if you do the focus, you can not only teach her to look away, but also keep her looking at you while you're slowly delivering that treat. So if you forget how to do that or want a refresher, go to doggonproblems.com, search for focus in the search field on the dog training tips section of the page. There'll be a search box on the right. There'll be a whole bunch of videos, and look for one where it talks about teaching a dog to focus in the title. That's where the video will explain how to do it. Okay, so we also talked about, for dog problems, I found there's really 2 parts to dog problems. Number 1, are we communicating the way the dog actually understands? A lot of times we say, come here, come here, come here, over here, girl, dog's name, dog's nickname, tap my thigh, whistle, something else. Now the dog has to listen to 10 different words that all mean the same thing. So it's easier for us to just come up with one single command word. And I like using fun command words. So understanding, and the way that we do that is by putting it in context. So a lot of that is through passive training. So the dog sits on its own, you pet it and say sit. When it lays down, you pet it and say down. When it comes here to the dog bed, we call it Oz or Australia, whatever it is. And so we're putting in context. The dog does the thing and hears the auditory cue at the same time. After enough repetitions, if I go to Australia, I get the treat. So that's kind of how they learn. So the first part is making sure the dog understands what it is that you want from them. But just because they understand what you want doesn't mean they're motivated to do what you want. That comes from flipping the leader-follower dynamic. Now, Scouts Guardians have done a good job of having a couple of rules already in place. I augmented by suggesting a couple more. For dogs, especially herding breeds, they need more rules and structure. Normally I would talk about exercise, but Scout is actually going to be a herding dog, herding some livestock. And as a result, come, or here. So I'm going to say it once, there's a treat waiting for her. If she comes over here, she'll get it. Here. But I'm not going to say here over and over again. The more I say it, the less I mean it. So for her, when she actually starts doing that, sit, that's going to make her feel good about herself. She's going to be tired. It's going to really be very, very beneficial. But we need to make sure that she respects the humans as an authority figure, because even though she might know what they want, she might not be motivated to do what they want. So we talked about, I'd like to talk a little bit about playing hard to get. If I'm always following the dog around, petting it, and just lavishing attention on it, well, I don't have to do anything to earn that attention. I'm going to get it regardless, and I can create a petulant dog, just like we can create a petulant child. So I'd like you to pet with a purpose and passive training. Petting with a purpose is if the dog comes up and nudges you or initiates contact or does this, I would tell her to sit or lie down. So down, down. So as soon as she does what I want, she gets the treat or the reward. So at first, if she's already sitting here, ask her to come and sit over here, or ask her to lay down. She has to do something to change her state. Sit. Eventually what will happen is she'll start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for the attention, because that seems to be what you direct her to, and so she just jumps the gun and goes straight to that. When she does that, make sure you do pet her. Otherwise she'll go back to the old way of pawing or nudging at you. And then say just the command word, just sit, just down, not good down, not oh scout. Now, if there's multiple dogs, you can say a dog's name, but usually I just try to say just the command word. Now, sit. After a while, the dog will, like I said, prepay for that attention. Make sure you do recognize that. Now, if I come in the room and see someone's petting Scout and she's standing up, I assume they might have forgotten to pet with a purpose, and I say, paycheck, that person has to stop petting, tells her to sit again. When she sits, pet her and say sit, preferably under the chin, and then says, actually, I asked the Scout to sit before you came in, and you missed it, and I just kept on petting her. But it's just, we won't realize how often we pet without a purpose. Now, passive training, the guardians just missed an opportunity to do that because Scott just walked over there and they were sitting behind the camera. They could have petted her and said here, which is her command word. Passive training is waiting for the dog to voluntarily offer you the behavior without any influence. Now, I'd recommend the guardians do this with all of her toys. She's got a basket full of toys, more toys than probably just about every one of my clients, which is awesome. Dogs should have at least 20 toys. She's probably got 40. And name each toy with a funny name. Every time she comes over, Pink Piggy, ostrich or whatever they are, Oscar the Grouch or whatever. Give each one a unique name, and after a while you can say, "Give me Oscar." No, that's Big Bird. I want Oscar, and then the dog will go get you what you want, and that creates a really nice vocabulary. Speaking of vocabulary, come up with a list of the official command words. A lot of people, like I said, use all these different versions of the word, and if you speak English, they all mean the same thing to a dog. Those are 10 unique, completely separated command words. So just if all of us always say here, she's much more inclined to listen for that and to respond to it. And passive training is a great way to do it. Every time your dog comes to you, pet it and say here. Every time she lays down, pet her and say crash or whatever it was. The shaping that we did in the video above is kind of a version of that. You wait for the dog to do it on its own, and then you reward it after the fact. So the more that we can do that, the more she's going to be inclined to want to do those things as opposed to the wrong things that we don't want her to do. So petting with a purpose is when you want to pet the dog or the dog's initiated contact from you, you pet it and say the command word. When the dog complies, and if you say it once, the dog doesn't comply, then lean back and watch TV and go out doing something else. The other one is passive training, which is waiting for the dog to voluntarily offer you the command word. And I use the kissing sound as my positive. And to put a dog in a sit, I usually raise it over their head like this. Sit. That could have been a here or a sit, but we went with sit this time. Okay, so I also went over my 4 escalating consequences. Hiss is number 1. Number 2 is to stand up abruptly, turn to face the dog, keep the dog in front of you, keep your hips pivoting till the dog's stationary, then take 2 steps backwards and only 2 steps. Pause for 1 second is your way of putting a period at the end of the sentence and saying we're done. That's the first consequence, where the first consequence is the hiss before the dog does the wrong thing. And only hiss 1 time per incident. And the hiss should be tss, not hiss. Don't say it, do it. The second one is to stand up abruptly, turn to face your dog. So if you hiss and it walks away and it comes back and does the second time, then you would stand up. Stand up abruptly, turn to face the dog, keep it in front of you, keep your hips pointed towards it without moving your feet. As soon as it's stationary, stand, sit, or lies down, take 2 steps backwards, pause for 1 second, then go back doing what you're doing. However, if what you were doing was being seated, when you sit down, you should assume that they're going to try to challenge you again, so don't sit deeply in the couch, sit on the edge. The third consequence is marching deliberately at the dog. So you march deliberately at the dog until the dog turns sideways or greater away from you, unless they're in a designated no dog zone. So if they're on the carpet and you're eating and they're not supposed to be there, you march at her and she turns sideways. You keep marching at her until she gets to the edge. When she gets to the line, that's where you stop enforcing. That's how you communicate what an invisible boundary or stopping point is. And if she tries to go around, go to the side, always block her. And then when you walk away from her, if you establish an invisible boundary, if I'm walking towards the dog and I stop right here, my authority, remember, is going whatever direction my hips and shoulders are pointing. So if I turn around now and walk that way, the dog's probably going to walk behind me. So the first several times you're enforcing an invisible boundary about eating or the kitchen or stuff like that, when you walk away, walk backwards. Take a left foot, right foot step, and then pause. Left foot, right foot, step, pause. And the dog comes forward, you rush towards them as your way of saying no. And at first you will be doing a waltz, back and forth, back and forth. Always wait for the dog to be stationary to move your step backwards, and never take a step backwards if they're moving towards you. That's implied as giving up the territory. So that's the third consequence. Stand up and march deliberately at the dog until it turns sideways or greater, unless it's already in a designated zone, and then keep on walking towards it until it gets to the edge of that boundary. The fourth one is basically a leash timeout. I put the dog on a leash, and I step on the leash, and in her case, about 2 feet away from where it attaches to her collar. Yeah, I thought that might get you to come. And I'll let you find that one. Oh, there we go. It's over here. And here. And then we step on it and basically wait for the dog to sit. We do not tell the dog to sit. When it sits, I take my foot that's standing on the leash and slide it towards her to take the tension off the leash. And at this point, I'm waiting for her to do this. Well, to lay down, but without telling her. So when she lays down on her own, very subtly, I take my foot off of the leash. Now she's free, but the leash is still attached. Now, it's dangerous to be dragging a leash around unsupervised, so make sure it's only supervised. Down. And then if a couple minutes later she repeats that bad behavior, if she runs by, you can step on the leash and reapply it. If a couple minutes go by and she doesn't do the bad behavior, then we take the leash off. It's not a quid pro quo. So now you have 4 ways of disagreeing with the dog. Always start with your hiss. So hiss, stand, march, leash. Then after a while, it'll be hiss, stand, march. You won't have to use the leash. Then hiss, stand. If you always start with your hiss, eventually that's all you'll have to use. All right, so let's see. What else do we go over? Some of the rules, having to sit at the door, double the length of time. Go to the door, say sit. If she doesn't sit, walk within 3 seconds, walk away, wait 1 minute, go back to the door and ask her to tell her to sit again. Sit. And if she doesn't sit within 3 seconds, walk away, this time for 2 minutes, then for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. And as soon as you go to the door and say sit, and she sits, bam, open that door up like there's no tomorrow. So that becomes the reward. She needs to make sure that the guardians are eating, or the guardians need to make sure they're eating before they feed her. And she likes to scavenge. She eats a little food and grabs some food, walks over, drops it down, and eats it here. Well, as soon as she walks away from her bowl, pick up her bowl, dump it empty, put the empty bowl back down. It's important to put the empty bowl back down. And then at that point, she doesn't eat again until the next meal. Down. And some dogs will go a day or 2 without eating. So if it goes longer than 3 days, please message me. But usually if it goes longer than 3 days, it means somebody else is sneaking her some food or she's finding something outside. Let me see, what else? I'd like the guardians to train her, especially one of the guardians in particular. She's going to work with one of the guardians, and so she's going to have more seeing him acting like a leader a little bit more. So the other guardian's team's going to need to supplement that a little bit. Going to YouTube and finding some tricks how to teach her to bang your dad, grab me a water out of the refrigerator, fetch my slippers, or whatever these things are. Put your toys away, wiping your paws down when it comes in from being muddy. Those are all helpful utilitarian commands that can really be beneficial. And the more commands she knows, the more confident she'll be. Confident dogs are less likely to be insecure, and insecure dogs are usually the ones that are most aggressive. So she's a puppy, so I don't think it's aggression so much. I think it's probably a little bit of confusion from her DNA because she's a herding breed. Little dogs running around really quick. She kind of provokes a response that she wants to correct them. There's probably a lot of little things, but the cutoff signals really help. So right there, she put her paw on top of me. I stopped petting her. She's going for more treats. Yes, you've got quite the wrist bone there. It looked like a little bit of a bump. Okay, let me see. For the truck, remember her mother likes to get in the truck and basically put her paws up here to look outside. And I told the guardian how to kind of teach her to put her paws down. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And now it's getting to the point where the dog misbehaves to get the reward for putting its paws down. So what I recommend doing is going and practicing getting in the truck without the actual busyness of actually going for a ride. So go get in the truck, tell her to sit down. As soon as she sits, come up with a word that means like roots, that mean 4 on the floor. And then leave and so when she goes in there, she like goes up here, just wait, don't say anything. As soon as she goes here, give her the treat and say 4, and then leave. And then get out of the car, out of the truck, close the door, and then open the truck and let her go back in. So each time you might go in and out of the truck 5 or 10 times for each practice session. And then she's practicing here, and you're putting a context. Roots means put 4 on the floor. And so now, next time she goes like this, eventually you can say roots, and she puts her roots down, and then you just pet her instead of giving her the actual treat for that. But you're now putting it in context and giving her a command word. To get down from here means the word roots, or whatever the fun word that you come up with is. Let me see. Are there any other questions or anything I forgot to go over? Usually this video takes me quite a bit longer to do, so I'm on my game today. But remember, the other rules, I guess I skimmed over a couple of those. Not being allowed in the kitchen when we're preparing food, not being allowed on the carpet when we're eating food, unless she's over here. If she does sleeping in the bed, she should get invitation on the bed, not jumping up on her own volition. Make sure you're always going through the doorway first. Whenever possible, you're going through the hallway, up the stairs, or whatever it is. For dogs, whoever's in front is in charge. And remember, if she's excited is not happy. So if you go to leash her up, go through that process that I described about breaking down the activity whether it's leashing or anything else where she gets excited, slowing her down, helping her practice step by step by step. Now, one last little thing, before you do what we talked about in the video above, like at a dog park or any place you're gonna be around other dogs, we want to deplete her excess energy first. So maybe a game of fetch, a nice walk, maybe she works a little bit in the morning and then she goes and gets a nap and then she goes and does that. We want to find that Goldilocks zone where she's not overly tired or have too much energy. But if you take off that top level of energy, that helps make things a lot easier for her to process. Now, I did talk a little bit about a muzzle and introducing her to dogs really close quarters. That should definitely be outside the first whole bunch of times that you do that with other dogs. And I would definitely use a muzzle. Make sure you introduce it in a positive way. So you can also search on dog training tips for muzzle, and it'll be a video that'll explain how to use CER to get a dog to feel good about the muzzle. Watch that video and follow those steps, and let me know if you have any questions on those so that I can make sure you're there. But that's something she needs to practice. Scout, she needs to practice. Come here, sweetheart. Here. She's going to need to practice that, just like anything else, in easy capacities first before we go to the more challenging stuff. All right, Scout, sit. This is Scout, and this is Scout's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.